Welcome! If you play competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, you may have heard of something called chain blocking. This is not an official game term, but chain blocking describes a tactic that restricts your opponent's ability to interact with your card effects. In this video, we're going to go over what chain blocking is and look at an example of chain blocking that occurred in a recent game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. First, to describe what chain blocking is, we have to go over the basics of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Chain and some rules regarding chaining effects. The chain is how activated effects resolve in Yu-Gi-Oh! Effects are placed on the chain in order, typically alternating between both players until both players decline to add to the chain. The chain resolves last in, first out, with the effect last activated in the chain resolving first, then the next most recently activated effect, and so on. The last effect to resolve is the first one that was activated. No other effects may be added to the chain once it starts resolving. Second, one of the types of effects that exist in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are called trigger effects. Trigger effects are activated when a certain condition is met, for example, when a monster is summoned or an attack is declared. Trigger effects can be mandatory, which means the effect must activate at the appropriate time, or optional, where the player may choose whether or not to activate the effect. Third, there are special rules in place when multiple trigger effects activate from the same action. For instance, if multiple monsters are summoned by the same card effect and each one has an effect that activates when it's summoned, both effects will activate. The order that these effects are placed on the chain is as follows. First, the turn player's mandatory effects are placed on the chain, followed by the non-turn player's mandatory effects. Then the turn player's optional effects are placed on the chain if they choose. Then the non-turn player's optional effects are added if they choose. After all the trigger effects are placed on the chain, the next player that has priority to add to the chain is the opponent of the player that last added to the chain. Finally, most effects that negate the activation of another effect must be chained directly to the effect they want to negate. Examples include Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, Solemn Judgment, and Psy-Frame Gear Gamma. All that said, chain blocking is the practice of ordering your trigger effects so that the effects you want to resolve are placed on the chain before some other effect. This prevents an effect that negates activations from negating one or more of your important effects. Let's look at an example that came up in one of my recent games in Master Duel's solo mode. In this game, I'm playing a Megalith Loner deck. It's important to know that most of the Megalith monsters have an effect that activates when they're ritual summoned, and the field spell Megalith Portal has an effect that activates when a ritual monster is special summoned. I had previously used Portal's effect this turn, which is why the game didn't prompt me to activate it here. I activated the effect of Megalith Bathor to destroy the AI's monsters, and the AI chained Megalith Aratron's effect to negate Bathor's effect and destroy it. I definitely did this play to get footage, and not because I didn't read what the cards do. Later on, I'm faced with the same scenario and I remembered, hey, you have to play around a monster with a negation effect. I held off on using Portal's effect until I could get the most out of it. I again ritual summoned Megalith Bathor, but this time I built the chain as Bathor Chainlink 1 and Megalith Portal Chainlink 2. By doing this, my opponent's Megalith Aratron couldn't chain to Bathor's effect. The end result was Portal's effect getting back a Megalith monster from the graveyard, but most importantly, Bathor's effect destroyed 4 of my opponent's cards. I used Portal's effect to block Aratron's effect from negating Bathor's effect, and this is why ordering chain links to prevent negation is called chain blocking. As long as you have multiple trigger effects that are activating at the same time, you can also use this tactic to force your important effects to resolve. A similar example of chain blocking is to use Access Code Talker's effect when it's link summoned, putting all of your other trigger effects on the chain first, and putting Access Code Talker as the last chain link, and because of Access Code Talker's effect, the opponent can't add to the chain. This allows all of the effects before access codes to resolve properly. And this is a really small corner case, but there are a few times when an opponent may be forced to choose between activating a trigger effect or activating a negation effect. Let's look at the following example. Both my opponent and I control a Silver Gadget. My opponent is the turn player, and they activate Torrential Tribute, destroying both Silver Gadgets. Since both of us have an optional trigger effect to activate, the turn player will place theirs on the chain first, so their Silver Gadget is Chainlink 1. Now I have a choice to make. The game is prompting me to activate my own Silver Gadget next, which is a problem because I'm also holding Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, which is not a trigger effect. It is a quick effect with a specific activation condition. If I activate my own Silver Gadget effect here, I can't chain Ash to negate my opponent's Silver Gadget effect. So in this example, I declined using my own Silver Gadget so I can negate my opponent's effect with Ash. Had I activated my own Silver Gadget effect, I would have chain blocked myself from using Ash's effect on my opponent's Silver Gadget. The game would still prompt me to activate Ash, but it would negate my own effect instead. While it's a legal play, it's not a good tactical choice. Something to note about chain blocking is that certain types of negation effects do not require them to be chained directly to the effect they want to negate. Look at cards like Effect Veiler, Infinite Impermanence, and Forbidden Chalice. These cards simply negate the effects of a face-up monster on the field. Chain blocking won't work against these cards. A monster effect activated as Chainlink 1 can be negated by Forbidden Chalice activated as Chainlink 2, 3, 4, or higher. As long as the negation effect resolves properly, it will negate the monster effect even though other Chainlinks got in the way. And finally, chain blocking only works with trigger effects. For example, you can't activate a normal spell like Monster Reborn and a quick play spell like Cosmic Cyclone at the same time and say you're chain blocking. When you activate a card effect, priority to add to the chain passes to your opponent. The only reason chain blocking works at all is because trigger effects being added to the chain work differently. Priority doesn't pass until you've placed all of your trigger effects on the chain, but usually you have to pass priority after you activate an effect, and that includes activating a normal spell card. And that's all to say about chain blocking. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.